Hey everyone, quick question for you today. If you asked your closest friends and family to describe you in 3 words, what would they say? That's what we're talking about today. What if branding wasn't just for companies, but for the way you live your life? In today's episode, I'm joined by branding strategist Simon Grainger, and we're unpacking a simple idea. Your brand is a reflection of who you are, not just what you do. We explore the journey every person must go through. 1, clarity, 2, alignment, and 3, evolution. Whether you're building a business, shaping a career, or redefining yourself, this conversation shows why strategy isn't just creative work, it's personal work. Simon Grainger is an empathy-led brand strategist helping growth phase businesses turn human connection into clarity, alignment, and commercial impact. Please check him out in the links below. And if you enjoyed this episode, please share it. There's a lot of hard work that goes into producing these episodes behind the scenes to produce free content for you to enjoy so we can all grow and learn together. On with the show. Simon, welcome to the show. Lovely to have you.
Thank you, Clint. Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, my pleasure to have you. Simon, how would you describe what you do for a living to somebody that you've just met?
So I help growth-based businesses articulate their brand so they can drive more sales.
Okay, interesting. What is it, when you strip it back, what is a brand really?
It's such a good question. I'd say it's twofold. There's an experience, a perception, and an emotion to that. So the experience that you have with a company, a person, a nonprofit, and how does it make you feel? What is that experience like? Is it something that you want to experience again? You're going to tell your friends about it. So it's a deeply psychological and subjective phenomena or experience, I would say.
Okay. And then what would be these pillars that make a brand so strong? So you've alluded to the emotional connection. What is it that a brand has to do to make those strong connections?
If you were to think about a brand being a person, having a personality that you can connect with, your values and your value set. So the more you can humanize your brand and business, the more you can connect with the person. And that translates into longevity and sales, revenue, etc. Yeah,
it's so important having a set of values and a value system and value structure, both from what you're saying from a brand perspective and a business perspective, but also from a personal perspective, coming from a background in fitness and self-improvement, knowing exactly what it is that you stand for and what your value system and structure is, makes it a lot easier to navigate through the world when you've got a series of fundamentals that give you inclusion and exclusion criteria for how you want to rule your roost or live your life.
That's a nice way of capturing it. I think every brand needs to have a value set and that's clearly expressed. When the times are good, it's easier, but where your value set really comes into play is during the tough times, that you stick to those core principles that guide you. And yeah, I think there's also an element to having a value set that you connect with your prospect or your client or customer, that they see elements of themselves in you and that they can connect with that.
I would imagine that would be really good at then establishing trust, because if you can relate to somebody, immediately you feel like you can trust them a bit more.
You can. Trust is everything. I mean, if you're wary of someone, and I think that iron curtain comes down very quickly.
Yeah.
If you are suspicious, trust is the underpin for relationships, and branding is no different. By having trust, you build connection, and again, it all boils down to relationships. So if you're trustworthy, you're going to get a lot further in that relationship.
Yeah. Something that came across on your LinkedIn profile and on your website as well, so it seems to me like it's quite a deliberate thing.
All of it is deliberate.
Yes, yes.
It's just a heads up. Yeah, absolutely.
But you mentioned in the beginning in your bio on the respective social media platforms, empathy-led, brand strategist, etc., and then the professional stuff comes after that. Why is that something that's very important to you? Because you've obviously done that on purpose. Why is empathy-led something that you've established as being a key tenet of your service provision?
So at the absolute core, the more empathetic we can be towards our target audience, our customer, the better we can understand and solve their pain point. Mm-hmm. So by being empathetic is a superpower in terms of building relationships and differentiating your offering relative to your competitor set. So it's that immersive, truly taking the time, listening, and by taking that data and then translating that into a product, service, and brand, that's what builds a business.
Yeah, that's so interesting, man, because, again, if I bring it back to the fitness side of things, of being empathetic towards somebody's journey and perhaps where they've gone wrong, they've obviously come to the gym for a reason, because there's something in their life that they're dissatisfied with, something that they're doing hasn't served them to the extent which they'd like. And being empathetic to that, at least in the beginning phases, as you get to know the person and understand where's their pain point, it helps a lot to get the buy-in. So, for example, I shared this story before on a previous episode, but I had a gentleman come in, and I asked this question to everybody when they come in for the first time: why now? Because you could have come 6 months ago. You could have kicked the can down the road and come in 6 months' time. Why now? And then they'll say, no, I want to lose weight, or I want to get fitter, stronger, I want to work with golfers, so I want to hit the ball further, or my back's sore, or whatever. I say, yeah, I get that, but why now? Like, what's happened now? There's something that's been like, okay, action time. And then I asked this guy this question. He said, same sort of generic answer. And then I dug a little deeper. Okay, but why? And he's like, okay, because I woke up this morning and my daughter asked me, Dad, why are you so grumpy all the time? And then I was like, okay, there's the why, because that's the pain point. That's like, oh, wow, that hurts. Don't want to go there. Don't want to do more of that. That was the difference. That's why he came into the gym then.
That was an aha moment. Yeah.
That was the thing, like, oh, shit. Okay, I need to get things together.
Get my A into G.
Yeah, exactly. And that's such an important part of behavioral economics and trying to modify a person's behavior is to understand, okay, what is driving the decision making? And that speaks to the strength of a brand as well, is what is driving that consumer, that human being's decision making. Does that make sense?
It does. I think you're a natural brand strategist.
Maybe I should apply some of that to my own brand.
Well, I think you're doing a good job. Geez, if you look at the business you're growing, absolutely, and it goes back to understanding, and the only way you can really understand is through listening, and the questions you ask, and giving your client or prospect the opportunity and that they can take their time to articulate what they're struggling with. And as you mentioned with the examples, his daughter, there was that inflection point that, was that lever to starting to train. Yeah.
Why is it that you find yourself doing what you do? What prompted you to get into the line of work that you're in now?
It's a great question. I'm fascinated by people. There were two main paths at university that I considered pursuing. One, going into advertising, so very mass propaganda. So to speak. Obviously, the more negative side of that. But really, I really enjoy the communications, and the other to go into psychology. And
nice.
Yeah. So, 16. I don't mention that, but 16, 17 years ago, that it'd actually be longer than that. Maybe closer to 20 or so years. It's been an evolution of that interest, that love.
Why is it that the psychology part of it is so interesting to you?
I think we're deeply psychological beings. I think we're complex, And I'm fascinated by what drives us to buy the brands that we do. What is the mechanics behind that? And that's what I focus on in terms of brand building and working with clients.
That's so interesting. And I, when you start to spend time in the arena, so you 15, 16, however many years it's been that you've been in that particular arena and industry, myself, 13 years, going on 14, and
scary when you mention the
yeah,
numbers.
you're like, man, it's like nearly 3 high school careers. Well, for you, it's 3 high school careers and
Wow.
some change. So you,
Sure, thanks, Clint. That was I appreciated the ageism there.
yeah, you're a bully.
Thanks, man. I've got a few years left.
So, and I look at the opinions that I held back then on my industry, on how I thought things worked, and how that's changed over time. And you evolve and you mature, and you realize that life's a bit more grey than it is black and white, and that sort of thing. I evolve, and I found these strong opinions that I used to have are now strong opinions that are loosely held. So I have an opinion on something until I have enough evidence to suggest something else, and then I change my opinion. So what is it, if you look at the length of your career and how you've evolved in your professional career, that what has changed, what has been a misconception about your industry and how you thought it would go in your career?
I think more reflecting on my business, how my target audience has shifted.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I don't know whether this might be a foray into answering the question, is I would work with a lot of startups and small businesses, and as my business has grown, more growth-based. I don't know if I'm necessarily answering your question. So it's just there's been a natural shift in how I've seen opportunity in the market.
Mm-hmm.
And particularly if you think of a business life cycle, at a growth level, the target audience and the clients that I work with are punching above their weight class, that they have the resource financially, they're looking for that expertise. And so it's been very much an evolution, trial and error over a number of years.
That is the thing, is it's trial and error. Hey?
Trial and error.
Time in the arena.
Getting a lot of things wrong, but evolving and adapting and building upon those strengths.
What do you enjoy most about what you do?
Working with people.
Is it?
Like, as much as I love the weekends, I love the week. On social, often like a Sunday afternoon, evening, those memes dreading Monday.
Yes.
Like
Carte Blanche theme music.
Jeepers. No, I'm glad I stopped watching that a while ago, but it just tees up negativity for the week.
Yeah.
I love the weekends. I love spending time with my family, and equally in a work capacity, come Monday, I can't wait to get going and engaging with clients, and whether it's private wealth or legal or engineering, I'm involved with these in different conversations, but it's all predicated on brand, and it's psychology, it's people, and that's what I love.
I imagine that it must be quite diverse in terms of the crux of it. The principles will remain the same,
Absolutely.
But the nature of the conversations and the different audiences and brand strategy must differ completely, which must keep it quite fresh.
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. The fundamentals don't change whether you're a startup or multinational, but it's particularly in the market or at level which businesses that I engage with are at, it's adapting it based on what their aims are and creating a strategy that's customized to them.
Yeah.
It's varied from financial services to legal, engineering, marketing. It's quite varied.
Do you have like a success story that you're most proud of, or a particular thing that you're most proud of so far?
So I played a role, and I think it's important to be clear that there are a number of stakeholders that facilitated that. Currently, I work with a subsidiary of Private Wealth, Old Mutual Private Wealth, called PWM Private Wealth Management, and in the catchy business, which is the wealth management arm. We're currently sitting on 9 billion AUM, so assets under management, and that has a lot to do with the folks in the business and clients and planners. But I was part of the strategy that's helped us get to this point, 9 billion
Jeez, that's fantastic, man. Well done.
Yeah. So as that played a part, but there's a
Yes.
number of stakeholders that make, and that's what a brand is. A brand doesn't live in isolation, but yeah, that to my mind is a real success story, and being there from inception to now.
Oh, were you there? So you've stayed the whole trip. You've been on
since,
that whole
since the
life
inception
cycle,
of the
yeah?
business, that particular business, the catchy business, and from literally 0 to 9 billion.
Yes, that's awesome, eh?
And yeah, like 3-4 years.
Wow.
Yeah, but it speaks to the value proposition and the audience, and a brand that really is invested and involved and well managed.
Yeah. I think also the aspect of being part of a team, like you said, there's so many different spokes in the wheel. And similarly with fitness, if somebody's losing weight or if they're achieving the goals, I might have assisted in that, but the reality is it is a team effort, because they might be also seeing a dietitian, or they might be, the reality is they've got to do the work themselves. I can write the best program, and they can come, even if they attend training twice, 3 times a week. It's 3 hours out of 168.
Oh, yeah, I'm impressed by your maths. Actually, I don't know if that's accurate, but you got to that number very confidently.
Yeah.
But the point is,
yeah.
But you are, again, if you think of your clients as a brand, you're playing a critical role, but it also depends on the snacks they have on the side, the takeaways, what they eat at home,
Exactly.
their lifestyle, work, etc. So it's a series of moving parts.
So you've got people that are going to get a little bit closer to what would be considered a perfect framework of decision making outside of the gym, and then you're going to get people that'll struggle with that part of it. And the reality is the people that put the work in outside of the gym are the ones that will excel and get the results that they want. And it speaks to that effort of taking that mantra of taking accountability, and that is a big thing in a team environment as well, is holding each other accountable. And something that I've thought about a lot is my personal brand. So what do I stand for, not in a business capacity, but as a person? What do I stand for? And for me, it's 3 things. It's accountability, respect, and attentiveness. And that goes in a number of different directions. So accountability, first of all, hold myself accountable to a certain standard, and then if I can do that well enough, then I'm in a position to be able to try and hold other people accountable. Number 2, respect myself. And then if I'm in a position to be able to respect myself, I can then not demand, but require that is then returned to me through other people. And then finally, attentiveness, being in the moment and being present. The one, attentiveness does become a challenge,
Sure,
as we've spoken off air about.
Yeah.
Being business entrepreneurs, that sort of thing. So that is, for me, probably the one that's always an ongoing work in progress. The others, I feel like I've got to a reasonable standard, but then at the very least, I can say, if somebody comes in through the door and we start to have these types of conversations, I can say, okay, well, this is me. And then I'm telling you that because I'm not telling you because I'm preaching. I'm telling you because I want you to try and hold me accountable to that. If you ever notice that I'm not doing those 3 things, like if I'm not being attentive and in your session, or like, I want you to tell me. If it upsets you or if it upsets me, I don't care.
I really respect those as a side note.
So, and that's the thing, is that that's what I went to earlier in the beginning, was it gives you a basis of a framework for decision making.
Yeah.
So I know, okay, cool, doesn't fall into my criteria, and then it becomes a little bit easier to navigate through life that way, So I think that it's so important for people to, if you're listening to this, to be able to give some thought to what is it that you stand for, and figure that out, and then find out, okay, well, if you had to ask somebody else, okay, imagine I'm a brand, like I'm a business. Let's say one of my favorite brands, because I'm reading the book at the moment, is Patagonia, and it's quite simple what they stand for, and the strength of their brand is phenomenal. But what would my brand be as a person? Like if you had to look at me and I was a company, what would you say? And you'd be amazed. You've got to be courageous enough, firstly, to ask that question because you're not sure what you're going to get back.
Yeah, feedback can be a bitter pill.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But it's necessary. And then if you're fortunate enough that you've lived out your own value set well enough and consistently enough, you'll get a similar sort of result coming back, then you know you're on the right track, you know. I might sit here and say, okay, yeah, for me to be the light, so Lara, for me to be the light, I need to be attentive, I need to have respect, and I need to be accountable. And then I go and ask somebody, okay, cool, what's my brand, you know? And then they say, oh no, X, Y, and Z, and it's not one of the three. I'm like, oh shit. Okay, back to the drawing board. Like something has gone awry here, you know?
Unless they're complementary and in some way support your overarching value set.
Yes.
But it's if you see yourself as accountable, but you don't show up on time for a client, that's where I would see a disconnect. But the exercise is invaluable, and it's not an easy one, and it's a very courageous activity to do, but part of our growth.
Exactly. And that is, the important thing here is if we tie it back to the business side of things, what happens when there's this disconnect? So what happens? What's an example of where a brand, for example, is disconnected from their customer base? How does one, I suppose, figure out when that has happened?
Often when there's some form of crisis, that the brand identity that's underpinned by the brand strategy, even if it's clearly articulated, isn't lived, and that's where you'll find a disconnect in either internal or an external circumstance. So internal in terms of churn, staff, turnover, or it could be a crisis. I just think, when you asked me the question, the first brand that came to mind was the BP oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico. Maybe it's about a decade ago now. I mean, that was horrific, and I just think just how poorly managed that was. And I remember an interview with the CEO at the time. I'm going to butcher what he said, but essentially was, no one wants this over more than me, so I can get back, to my life, or something along those lines. Just completely removed from the environmental damage and the livelihoods and the cost, and just that's, to my mind, you could have a brand strategy and that identity around being pioneering and I don't know if that was necessarily say eco-friendly, but a really progressive brand, and then your captain of your ship makes a statement that I just want to get back to my life. This is an inconvenience. Just shows a disconnect between what the brand stands for and then how it's actually lived in the context of a crisis like that.
Yeah, this is the second time in our conversation you've brought up a crisis or crisis in a business. What about the opposite? So what's an example that you can think of where the strength of a brand has perhaps saved a business in crisis?
I can't think of one off the top of my head, but you can turn a crisis into an opportunity and it goes back to our conversation around values. If you hold yourself accountable and truly live with integrity, and if you are in the wrong, that you own up to it very, very candidly, very openly, transparently, saying, we have stuffed up and this is what we're doing to course correct. You can win favor with your audience and you can build brand equity, brand value. But you need to have the EQ and you need to have a team that supports that approach.
What I find so interesting about business is the transition from being a one-man band into then being a company that employs more than one person. And then that might be a very small team in the beginning, and then it might grow into tens and then hundreds of people. And how through the strength of the brand or the company culture or maybe the personal brand of the individual that started it and then extrapolates that out over all the employees is such a fascinating thing for me, because it's also very challenging. It's easy to manage a one-man band because it's just me. And then, I bring somebody else on, maybe a second or third or fourth. And then now I have to try and figure out, okay, well, what do those people stand for? Are their values aligned with mine? And then are our values as a collective aligned with what would be the value structure and the value set for the company. So speak to me a little bit about the importance of that cohesiveness between a company that's got a number of employees with a whole bunch of their own personal brands and value structures, but then have to fall into this unified umbrella value set.
It's imperative. You need to ensure that the staff and the onboarding of new members aligns with your value set. A brand that comes to mind is Bartu Sneakers. I don't know if you're familiar with them, founded by Theo Beloy. And I think the staff complement's sitting about 300, probably north of that now. Our brand is growing. It's a wonderful success story. You can see Theo's values are inculcated in his staff and in marketing, and the brand is growing. And it's a bit of an exaggeration to say that I see on social it's as though there's a store opening every week. Maybe not to that extent, but the brand is growing. And if you think of such a competitive market in the sneaker space, like you got Nike and Adidas, etc., and Bartu Sneakers has forged its own path. It's just remarkable. Where I'm going with this is his values, you can clearly see, and I've been following him for a number of years, is lived in the staff, it's lived in the product, it's lived in the retail experience. So it's going back to what is my brand identity, what is my value set, my personality, my value proposition, how am I positioned in the market. You need to lock down and articulate what those core elements are, because that is your brand strategy, and make sure that that is your benchmark for employing people.
Yeah. Okay, so then they've established that. Then the next challenge would obviously be growth.
Yes.
So how does one evolve the brand and scale the brand without losing yourself?
With difficulty.
Yeah.
It's truly growing pains a part of business. It's to keep bringing brand to the center, front and center. Is this, you spoke about your values. Is this true to me? Is this not? So it offers you guardrails. So always keep going back to your brand document. This is what we're about. This is true to who we are, and that's going to help you with that growth. But it's an ongoing process. There's an evolution to this. You're going to make sure that, or want to make sure that there's staff training, that each member of staff understands the values. What is that experience like engaging with customers? So constant training and reiteration of the brand. It's not a one and done. It's an ongoing process.
There's brands that I've read a lot of books and listened to consume a lot of content around businesses and personal development and so on. And there's a few brands that speak out to me, listening to you talk at the moment, and I think back to the stories that I've learned and from those brands, like Starbucks, for example, and how they really prioritize the education of their staff and the Starbucks education programs that happen if you're just going to work behind the till, for example, on how to deal with a customer, EQ, how to resolve conflict, all of these skills that are necessary in life, not necessarily even limited to a coffee shop at Starbucks, but empowering the individuals and the staff within them. And that is obviously very reflective of what would be the bigger picture. And then I've mentioned already things like Patagonia, for example, and how that was rooted in, how they're still rooted in being eco-friendly and wanting to contribute positively to the environment and wanting to encourage people to live I would say, a minimalistic life. So their policies, their return policies, even if you've had the product for a long time and it's become a bit frayed, or there's a pocket that's become undone, you can send it and then they'll redo it. And so these are all...
There's a documentary, Well Worn. I don't know if you've seen it.
I haven't, no.
Check it out on YouTube, Well Worn. And it speaks exactly to that in terms of the Patagonia ethos around sustainability. Because
you feel like your money is not only going to something that you're getting in return, which would be either a nice coffee at Starbucks or an experience at Starbucks or a nice jacket or jersey, but you're contributing to something that's a bit bigger. And Starbucks, it might be educating that person or having a nice engagement with somebody that you don't know, or meeting friends and family at that place, which makes you feel a certain way. Patagonia, it might be, yes, I'm getting this cool jacket, but I know that they still have this thing where 10% of their, whatever it is, I don't know if they've changed it now, but it was 10% of their profit went to environmental stuff. And not NGOs in America. They were given to small-time people who were individuals that weren't being funded by corporations and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So you establishing that trust with that company to be like, hey, I back these guys if I give them my money and get something in return, that not just the product that I'm getting is going to be good, but I'm also going to be, I trust them to do some good with the money that I'm giving them, you know?
Absolutely. And with that, you're building brand equity, and that's what brand strategy is about building value, that you're part of something. And we were speaking about psychology earlier, that we are part of something greater than ourselves, that we subscribe to the values of a company, in this instance, Patagonia. We emotionally connect. And if you can achieve that with your brand, you're creating a moat, and it makes it very difficult to attack in terms of competitors because it's an own space that's yours. So you're also more likely to spend more, you're prepared to pay more because you see value, and that's a very powerful place to be as a brand.
What about you as a consumer? So let's put you on the other side of it. What brands are you particularly loyal to? Do you have any?
I have a bit of a shoe problem that I face.
Yes.
I'm on, quite like New Balance, and that's not a cheap exercise, as my wife will mention. I'd say New Balance is a brand that I follow and resonate with.
Why?
The style, the comfort, and their marketing has been phenomenal over the last decade. I think they've forged their own relative to the lack of Nike and Adidas, etc. I connect with the aesthetic, and I don't know if you own a pair or have had a pair before.
I've had a pair of New Balance,
phenomenally comfortable. Yeah. But yeah, in terms of a deeper connection, not that I've been able to surf much. I know we were speaking before the session how life changes when you have children. I used to surf quite a bit, and a Ripcle was a brand that I really resonated with, and McFanning, 3-time world champion. Just there's an aspirational dimension, but also used to like Quicksilver when Kelly Slater, 11-time world champion, was sponsored by them. So there's a connection. So it can be either aesthetically or it could be an aspirational dimension. It just depends on the industry and category that I'm after and what I value.
Yeah. Talking about surfing, I saw, I don't know how long ago, it was quite recently, maybe 6 months to a year ago, but do you remember the brand Instinct?
Yes.
So they've popped their heads up again.
And then Sean Thompson, I think was the...
I'm not sure who it was.
The founder.
Was he?
I stand to be corrected, but that's my media association.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I
with
see...
the Lumo, like yellows and green, yes.
Yeah, and then there was
back in the day.
Yeah. And I see they've popped up again. And that was like a major nostalgia moment, because as a kid in the 90s, Instinct, you had like an Instinct shirt, or even if you didn't surf.
Oh yeah, you're associated with the culture.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it's such a funny thing. When I saw that logo, somebody wore it somewhere, and I was like, oh wow, they're back.
But that also speaks to brand, and there's a nostalgia piece to that, particularly if you are, I want to say this carefully, older,
yes.
That you can relate to a past time, and in this case, brand, that a brand can be a pocket of an experience, an association to the past, surfing, Durban. So it's a complex system.
Yeah, like Gotcha comes to mind as well.
I was going to bring it. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then was it Bad Boy? I remember.
Yeah, Bad Boy. Island Style. Yeah. No, it's crazy, man. But then these brands come and go. So like you look at those brands, and from the outside, it's like, okay, well, why haven't we seen those brands for a while? Where did they go? What happened? That something must have happened, whether they lost market share or whether they didn't connect with their audience as well as maybe I thought they did. Maybe So what about when is it time for a brand to maybe look at rebranding or evolving professionally?
I'm always hesitant for a client to just rebrand. There has to be a very real, solid business decision that underpins that. And also, if you think of a rebrand, you can think of it as on a spectrum. It could be a brand refresh, so very light accents to say the logo and the color palette and the treatment. Or it could be a full-blown rebrand where you're changing the logo completely, the look and feel. You could be going after a new market. The brand could be tired. There's a number of reasons for that. It's just a case of what is the real reason, because there's a financial cost to that. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but if you're needing to change the signage on your vehicles, on your buildings, your material, etc., yeah, there's a financial cost to that. So it's just, why are you doing that? And then provided there is a strong case for it, what I'm suggesting is conducting, a brand audit.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a brand review of key facing touch points. So you want to make sure that from the look and feel, your style guide, to packaging, to social media, every touch point reflects that new look and feel. Because you can't have a disconnect, because that creates a schizophrenic image in the mind of your consumer, and you just can't afford that.
Yeah, and I'm thinking as a consumer, then immediately what gets affected is then the trust part of it, because which one is it? Where am I?
Yeah.
Am I the old brand? Am I part of supporting the old brand? Am I supporting the new brand?
And we can't afford that. We can't afford our consumer to have that experience, because it'll be safe to go with a competitor. So
yeah, safety, which is
brands bring safety,
which is so rooted in our biology. You know, a lot of the decision making and the way that our brain is wired is to try and make sure that we keep homeostasis. You know, we keep things as is. There's no safety threats, and we do whatever we
don't
can.
Want to get taken out. So
yeah, we don't want to do. Yeah, exactly.
You don't want to be on the periphery.
Yeah, and that would then dictate the certain brands that we decide to align with. If something is like, doesn't make sense, even if I don't know exactly what it is, maybe it's just a gut feel, but I'm not going to put my neck out for this.
And that's going back to our initial conversation around, there's an experience and perception and emotion that is connected to brand. And if it doesn't feel right, generally it's not. So there's something to be said from how we respond.
Yeah.
It doesn't come from anywhere. It's rooted in something.
Yeah. What are the dangers then of clinging to an outdated brand? It's like, what if it's necessary? Like, what if you have to? It's time to move with the times, so to speak, and a brand is moving in a particular direction, or even the direction that they thought they were supposed to move into is not panning out. What is the danger of clinging to that outdated brand?
You lose relevance, and if you're not front of mind, you're not going to see those sales. You're not going to be building brand equity. So your clients or customers are going to go somewhere else. So your business is going to sweat, and you're in trouble.
Yeah, being relevant is so important. Rich Mulholland is a guy who, I think he was on the Incredibles
machines.
Yeah. And I've listened to a couple of his talks and that sort of thing. He's a really interesting guy to listen to.
Very.
And he talks about, I think it was relentless relevance, and especially when things are moving at the rate that they're moving now, and it's never been faster, and the competition and the urgency with which you have to stay relevant is at an unprecedented rate. And that's such an important point, is that how do you stay relevant in a consumer's life? You know, how do I stay relevant in my customers' lives here at the gym? You know, how do you stay relevant with your clients?
Exactly. I mean, maybe just a point on that, it goes back to, or certainly a component is empathy, is checking in with your clients when they've got sessions with you. Where you're at, what are you going through, what are you struggling with, what's working. It's being topical, it's being in the know. That is so important.
Yeah, that makes me think back to a story from Monday. I had a lady come in, and she's a tremendous woman, strong sort of matriarch of the family, and she's been through a hell of a lot in her life. And anyway, she's normally very bubbly and and comes in here just excited to do some exercise and do her thing. And I could see things weren't really as they normally are on Monday. And I asked her what the deal was. And anyway, it was as suspected. She wasn't in the best state that day for a number of reasons. And she wasn't being very empathetic towards herself, which is something that I think we all could probably learn a thing or two. We hold ourselves to the standard. And if we had to put a foot wrong, and then somebody that we knew put the same foot wrong, we wouldn't come down on them as hard as we come down on ourselves most of the time. And she was being hard on herself, but she wasn't in a good space that day. And I said to her, okay, cool, come. The golf course is closed on a Monday. They do maintenance. And I said, all right, no gym today. We're going to go for a walk. And then I said, I'm going to show you the best view in Durban. And then it's the second tee box here at Durban Country Club. So it's right at the top here, and it's one of the high points of the golf course, and you can overlook the promenade going down to the harbour. And then if you head north, you can look all the way through. You can probably on a clear day see maybe as far as Umhloti.
Wow, okay.
And it's all the way down the promenade. And then we went and got some air. We went for a walk, and then she came back. And then at the end of the session, she gave me a hug, and she said, "I didn't realize how much I needed that." And then that was the session. You know, there was no exercise, no weightlifting, no nothing. And just what you were mentioning there about the empathy and understanding that made me think of that.
And the thing is, you have no idea how impactful that gesture was in her day, her week, maybe even in her year. By taking the time to be present, to observe, to understand, to ask, and look at what that translated, and that builds trust, it builds longevity as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. It's making these sort of donations to a bank account. Somebody made reference to, oh, do you know what it was? It was Rocky Beekram, who's a psychologist. She came on the podcast a couple of weeks ago. And she spoke about a marriage and a relationship as, think of it as a bank account where you're making withdrawals or deposits. And when you get to the point where you are making more withdrawals than deposits, the relationship's in trouble. That was the question was, how do you know when it's time to get help as a couple? And she said when the amount of negative experiences are outweighing the positive ones. And that's because you're making withdrawals and you're not depositing anything back. And that's so true in the sense that you have to be consistently topping up that relationship positively. And then the more you do that, the more trust you establish. And then when something goes wrong, or you do put a foot wrong, we're all human, maybe we slip up. We say something out of turn that we shouldn't have said, or we don't consider that person's point of view. There's enough.
You got reserves.
Yeah, you got reserves, man. You've made enough deposits that when it's time to make a withdrawal, it's like, oh, you know what? I'm going to give Clint the benefit of the doubt here because historically he's done X, Y, and Z for me. And there's all those things where you made deposits and I've got a surplus in that bank account. So that when this time comes to make a withdrawal,
you got the
buffer. You know, and that because there's so much trust that's been established up until that point in the brand or in the relationship. You know, the same thing with the brand is like, if I've had good experiences with a particular brand for 10 years and then something happens and I get a garment of clothing and there's a hole in it or there's a whatever, then I'm like, oh, it's fine. You know, they're also human. Go back, replace it. No harm, no foul. But that's because they've established trust over positive experiences over a number of years. You know, and I think that's really what it comes down to at the end of the day.
And in a branding context, that's exactly what a brand ought to be. It should be a relationship that should be predicated on trust, and there's longevity or sustainability with that.
Yeah, it's all about longevity and sustainability at the end of the day, because we're all here for a bit, a fair while, hopefully, and you want to be involved in as many enriching relationships and engagements as possible. and that could come down to a personal level with the people around you that you choose to surround yourself with. But at the same time, it includes things like businesses. What are the businesses that I choose to associate myself with, that I consistently frequent? Holmes Brothers is a brand
Lovely.
that...
Yeah, homegrown.
Yeah, homegrown. Been on the show as well. And love the ethos behind the Holmes Brothers and what they do and how they try to support local business and do as much as they can in-house and locally. And, those are all things where I'm like, yeah, man, I could support those guys all day long. And if I've got a choice, I'm going to go there. And those are the types of experiences that I choose to have as a customer. I want to go and have a lacquer conversation with like this hip youngster who's wearing Holmes Brothers kit, and this guy or girl is happy and they're engaging and they're talking local South African stuff, and then when I go somewhere else, even Woolworths, like if you go to the Woolies coffee shop, those coffee shops that they've got in the store, like 90% of the time, those people are super friendly, and they want to say hello to Grace and our son, and they, chat to you about what coffee do you want, and okay, is there anything else I can, like, those experiences make up a day, and the days make up weeks, and weeks make up years, and years make up lives. And that's the strength, I guess, bringing it back full circle to branding. And who do you decide to spend your time with? And then, by association, spend your money on or spend your money with. What do you think about that?
I think it's a nice way of phrasing it. We're voting with our time and money. And that's in both a personal, professional, and consumer perspective.
Yeah.
Very relevant.
And attention as well. That's where, especially in 2025,
yes.
Attention is currency.
You're watching something on Netflix and you're on your phone, you're on TikTok and WhatsApp. It's fragmented, and as you said, attention is currency. It's the most important thing. We need to be topical, we need to be relevant, and we need to have a reason, that something compelling, that consumers or prospective consumers engage with us.
But for it to have a lifespan and to have longevity, that reason to garner an audience's attention has to be something that is positive and that is going to add value to their lives on a long-term basis for it to be sustainable. You can garner attention for the wrong reasons too.
Yeah. But in terms of longevity, I would lean towards positive.
One of my favorite questions on the show: have you changed your mind on anything recently?
Sure, that's an interesting one. I quite like that quote: the older I get, the less I know. So
yeah, wisdom. Yeah,
it's a bit like you spoke to earlier in the session. Is you're open to changing your? I don't know if maybe it was when we had our coffee prior to this. That
strong opinions, loosely held. Yeah,
loosely held, and I think more generally, I'm just trying to be a little bit more open and not assume I know why someone acts in a particular way. There's so many variables that we're not privy to. So just maybe a little bit more accepting. Certainly not perfect at it. I'm certainly a flawed human. But I do think, just as I've gotten older, you don't truly know. So if you can predicate that with a bit of empathy and kindness, it can go a long way.
Yeah, that's so interesting, and that's cool, man.
Hard.
That's very cool.
But I mean, if you think about it, you've exercised that with your client that you had earlier this week. In terms of mixing it up, I'm sure it made a world of difference to her. So it's just trying to be more.
Yeah, not an easy thing to do.
No, it's hard, and also we can get so caught up in ourselves and the chaos of the day. So
I saw a video the other day. Jimmy Carr, he's a legend. I love that guy, and he's such a cool human as well. Yeah. Like his comedy is really out there, and it's not for everybody.
Definitely not.
And he's totally fine with that. Like he wants it to be that. And you talk about a strength of a brand, like a personal brand, like that oak is knocking it out the park. But there was an incident where he was in the UK somewhere, and these two crowd audience members were started to get into it with one another. like telling each other, "Oh, I'm gonna fuck you up," and this, like it got heated.
Jeez, okay.
So he stopped the show, and he said, "All right, lights on," and then he said, "Okay, you." So there was the instigator, who was a younger kid, like a young adult. He said, "Okay, you got to go," and then security came and they took him out, and then he stopped, and he could have been insulting. He could have made jokes about it. He made a little bit of a joke. He's like, "Yeah, he's had too much to drink." And he's like, "Probably with a sprinkle of cocaine."
Very, very, yeah, very, very in keeping of him.
Yeah, but he said to his crowd, he's like, "Guys, he's got to leave because we're all here to enjoy the show. But I'm sorry, sir, that he said those things to you. But maybe the guy's had a really bad day. Maybe things are not good. Maybe with a bit of alcohol, something's come out." He's like, "I'm 99% sure it's actually not about you, sir. It's something that he's dealing with. And we've got to be empathetic towards that." And he said, "Don't worry." And then he said to security, he's like, "This kid is going to be quite embarrassed because I've asked him to leave the show. So do me a favor, just look after him, and then take him to the pub, take him to the bar, and then buy him a beer for me." And I was like, that is such, like, in the moment, a way of just being like, okay, cool, not burning bridges, understanding things might not be as they seem. Even if this person has behaved inappropriately, we don't know. And this guy's just disrupted Jimmy's session, his set. And he could quite easily have been like, "Oh no, that oak's a wanker," or whatever, and everybody would have laughed, and then you would have been on with the show. But instead, he sort of nurtured both those characters in that particular situation and walked away from it having behaved in a responsible manner that doesn't leave anybody feeling aggrieved unnecessarily, And I was like, man, that oak is just on another level. Like, really, you talk about a brand. Like, I would pay money now to go out of my way to go to his next comedy set if he ever comes back to Durban, just based on that. Because I'd be like, man, I can put myself in a room with that guy for sure.
Yeah, he's a professional, and it also speaks to his experience in EQ, and also not alienating his audience. And the thing is that your audience is watching you, and it reminds me, with your example, it's the same thing with social media. How you respond online, people are watching. So it's just, you need to be in keeping and be true both on and offline. It just made me think of that. You just have to.
What do you stand for as a brand?
I hold myself to honesty and consistency.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say those are the two. Yeah, if I were to reflect on it.
Why are those two things important to you?
Because I want to go to bed at night knowing that I've been true to myself and true to my clients and family, and that in every interaction, both on and offline, I'm the same person. So if I'm giving a talk, I bring in dad jokes, and they're weak-head. My 2-year-old's really starting to find like my humor, like what's going on. I've got a beagle. I've got a beagle at home, and he's also like. But where I'm going with this is
the beagle also checks you skiff.
Yeah, he's like, I think he just smiled, like smiling, because he wants his next chow.
Yeah.
But yeah, like in the session now, this is how I would act on stage, in person, having a beer with a friend. What you see is what you get, and I value that, and that's without getting morbid, as you spoke to earlier. Life is short, and that's something I deem to be at the highest level of having a good life. A meaningful life is that I was honest to myself and others.
Very cool, man. Yeah, that's so cool. Where can people find you if they want to get in touch?
LinkedIn, I'm very active. If you type in Simon Grainger Consulting, email hello@simongrainger.com, and my cell is 078-736-8824.
Okay. Website as well?
simongrainger.com.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. You're putting some good stuff out on LinkedIn.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's really, really cool.
Thank you.
Really nicely curated and very digestible and easily interpretable for the layman. I'm not sure if I said that correctly.
You did. Well, I understood what you meant.
Yeah. We're so close. We're so close.
You know what? 98% is 100 in my books.
It was literally the second last sentence. Damn it, I've done this another time before. I need to make sure I focus all the way to the end.
It might be your coffee starting to...
You know when they say like most car accidents happen closest to home because like you start to switch off? It's like most train wrecks in a podcast happen the last two sentences.
Well, I think it just makes you more relatable, Clint. Yeah.
Well, thanks, man. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show, and yeah, I wish you all the best in your future endeavors, and I'll continue to watch with interest.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. It's been awesome. I thoroughly enjoyed myself.
Yeah, me too, man. Thanks.
Cool. Thank you.
Hey everyone, a huge amount of work and effort goes into producing this podcast, whether it's from the research going into the episode, whether it's finding the guests coming to the location or them being online, to producing the content, edited and putting it in a format that is conducive to your ears and your eyes. And it goes a really, really long way if you can just do me one thing in return for this free content: share it. Share it far and wide, and if you find an episode useful, send it to someone who might feel the same way. That's all. Thanks a million. See you next week.